am going to go ahead and we're going to be recording this session just so everybody knows. And so welcome everybody to this month's team coaching webinar hangout. Good to see we have a few regulars who have been coming back from previous months. So nice to see some of you who have been here before. And we have a new name, some new names here on today as well. And we may have a few more joining us as the session unfolds. So really nice global group we have attending this evening. People attending from United States and from Brazil, from Mexico, from Kenya, and from Singapore. So really exciting to see a nice diversity of folks here. And what I might ask you to do is in the chat window, if you like to maybe just give a few lines about yourself, maybe, we know which country, maybe you could say which country you're from because I know where you're from, but maybe the others who are on the call don't. And maybe tell us in the chat window, just a little bit about, what you do. Do you have your own business? Are you working for a company? And so we can get to know each other a little bit more on the session. And so we can take advantage of using the chat window during this session. So, since we are a small group as well, we might actually just do a little bit of introduction. So, yeah, why don't we go ahead and do that instead of, if you want to type it in the chat window as well, you can if you have any technical issues. But I'll go ahead and begin, and then we'll just do some quick introductions. And if we have any other guests joining us or participants, we'll introduce them as they come in. So, hi everyone, Krister Lowe. Really nice to be with all of you. I am the host of the Team Coaching Zone podcast and have been running these monthly webinar sessions. And it's always great to get together with people who are interested in this topic of team coaching. And really, these webinars are an experiment and are really designed to really just create an organic space to allow for a conversation about team coaching to emerge and for us to all share stories, challenges, tips, insights, and tools, around the practice of team coaching. And, in some ways, part of the idea of that is in coaching, it's oftentimes when we can create a space where a client, we can get into a co-relationship or a co-active or a co-creation space with a client is when really interesting things emerge. And so rather than going in and trying to teach the client or prescribe sort of a solution, just like in coaching here in this webinar, rather than sort of present on a topic, the idea is to really allow a space for what really is in the group to emerge and what's really meaningful for us to talk about and to share that together and co-create this session together. So really, I'm going to invite you all to participate as much as you want. If you want to turn your microphones on and off, feel free to do that. We can keep, since we're a relatively small group, you may want to keep your microphones on. If there's a lot of background noise, we can always shut those off. If you want to come on video as well, GoToMeeting can handle up to 6 people on video and 100 on audio. So anyways, that's just a quick start. I have some more introductory comments to make, but why don't we go ahead and just do a quick run through of introductions. Aldo, I see you here in the chat window. Do you want to come on the microphone, Aldo, and just say a few words about yourself? I noticed in the chat window you said here you're retired and you started to practice coaching, but it might be nice to get to know you a little bit more.
Well, I'm majored in engineering, metallurgical engineering, long ago, and had some extensions. I attended some organization administration business here in Rio. Then I attended an AMP in INSEAD in France.
Okay.
And I had several opportunities during my professional life to attend seminars and all of that. Most of my life was in the aluminum business, in the whole chain in Brazil and outside Brazil. I had the opportunity to work also in Germany on a project and in Africa in a plant. And as I'm retired now, I'm taking advantage of my, let's say, time available, where on my experience, my life experience and professional experience, and starting to use it practicing coaching. That's basically what I'm doing.
And what kind of, you're coaching business people, leaders, managers? What kind of folks are you coaching?
At this moment, I'm working in executive and life coaching.
Oh, executive and life coaching.
One-on-one.
Okay. And your interest in team coaching? What's your interest around team coaching?
Well, I think it will be an evolution of one-to-one.
Mm,
And I had the opportunity. I come from a small town where I worked with them in order to develop what I call a development, uh, let's say, a development group in the management of the town, which is basically a team management. Because in a place where uh, uh, money is relatively short, you better manage it well
mm,
to get something done. So
okay.
I made a proposal, and that's, let's say, that would be a good example that I would try
Mm.
to work on a team approach.
Oh, wonderful.
I don't quite say that this is a team coaching, but it's more a team approach to do that. It's a
Right.
development council. I organized it. They produced the law. They approved the law and all that. And it's in the process to start the implementation of this development council.
Okay.
So that's
Excellent.
why I'm interested to listen more than contribute, because I'm not prepared to contribute much at this point in time.
Okay. Well, let's see how that goes. And you did your coach training within SIAD, is that right?
No. INSEAD was management group
Okay.
course. That was taken in
Mm.
1999.
Okay.
I took one course here in Brazil.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, great to have you, Aldo. One of the little statistics on the Team Coaching Zone podcast, we've had listeners of the podcast in 47 countries now, and Brazil is one of the top 5 countries where we have listeners. So it seems like team coaching, and both in Brazil and in other parts of South America, we have quite a few listeners in that part of the world. So maybe team coaching is a topic of interest geographically in different
Uh-huh.
places. But yeah, great. Wonderful. So thanks so much for introducing yourself. Jorge, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone, and I'm Jorge Tejeda. I reside in Mexico City. I recently retired from Citi after 30 plus years as
Mm,
a corporate investment banker as well as commercial banker, overseeing Mexico and in the commercial banking. And then my last thing was looking after Latin America, including Brazil and Colombia, Peru, and Central America and Argentina and then decided to take a how do you say sabbatical year, which included attending the uh, ESE. I don't know in English. I think you say IESE, whatever, in Barcelona,
okay.
and in the advanced management program, and then decided to enroll in Columbia University, where I'm finishing
Mm,
and I met. Krista that way, through Columbia, and in January launched the an advisory, a company in Mexico together with some European partners, which we focus on consulting companies for development of their leadership teams,
mm,
and as well as executive coaching, because both things relate to each other. You at the end
mm.
go to the individual. And again, just as Aldo, I'm not experienced on team coaching. I never done it. So, and I'm relatively new to this field, which is a passion for me to
Mm,
really make a difference on the life of the
nice.
executives. Since all my life I was banking.
Mm,
I'm a banker for all my
right,
life,
right.
but I'm enjoying very much what I'm doing now.
Mm,
So it's exciting, and that's why I'm involved in this
great.
webinar as well.
And you're doing one-on-one coaching now with executives?
Yes, I do, and a
Yeah.
lot of my clients. I went there many industry, but really I'm focusing for natural reasons in the
Mm,
financial sector,
right, right. Excellent.
giving network.
Well, great to have you joining us, Jorge. Great.
Happy to
So,
be here.
Kathy, let's give you a try. See if your mic's working. Looks like we're not hearing from Kathy, but okay. So maybe we'll see if Kathy's mic gets on a little bit later. But so we have Kathy Vaughn. She's in Nairobi and is a leadership and team coach based in Kenya. She's been coaching for about 6 years. And from what I understand about Kathy, she's also pursued some team coach training. I don't know if you want to share that in the box or not, Kathy, of what your interest in team coaching around. But I know you've done a team coach training program with Jennifer Britton, somebody I interviewed on the podcast back in episode number 11, a real sort of pioneer and legend in the field of both group and team coaching. And so she's a real sort of a big contributor in this space. And I think Kathy's also done a program with Peter Hawkins, who is based in the UK, a really popular podcast episode I released with him in episode number 19 a few weeks ago. And Peter Hawkins, we can talk a little bit about some of his work tonight if you guys are interested in that, but a really great, a huge figure in the field of team coaching, and a lot of his models and frameworks and books really, I think, are just really belong on the shelf of anybody interested in team coaching. So, real fan of his. So, Kathy, if there's anything else about your background and your interest in team coaching, feel free to drop that in the chat window. I know Kathy also, from her background, is a real expert in conflict resolution and has many years of experience working in conflict resolution as well. So really brings a whole suite of skills. And then we have Krish. Krish, do you want to come on and say a few words about yourself to the group?
Sure, Gusto. I don't know whether you can hear me clearly.
Yeah, really clearly. Good.
Excellent. So great to be on this forum, first of all, and I like it that we're a nice, cozy group that can exchange a lot of ideas. But let me start off with the fact that these days when I introduce myself, I start by saying that I'm a lifelong learner, and that's how I'm looking at myself going forward. But from a background perspective, I've been working for 27 years, in 4 different industries and about 5 different companies. So you could say that I'm a little bit of a restless soul. I started with 3M Company, which is in industrial specialties.
Yeah, famous company. Yeah.
Yep. And I worked in the US and Asia. Yep. Sorry, Kirsty, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say that I know 3M's organizational culture is really famous for, the way it has designed organizational culture around innovation and employee engagement. It's oftentimes highlighted as an example of a company that's good at innovation and engagement. I don't know if you would agree with that, but that's a reputation.
Yeah, I would. And in fact, I could share some stories where how we would come together as a team way back before even the internet was invented, and where even before English really was prevalent as the language of business. But there was a 3M language that underlined all the meetings when we'd meet international colleagues from across the world. So
cool. Yeah,
it was
amazing
about
that.
When you'd get in a meeting with folks from South America or Japan or whatever, folks wouldn't speak English, but they would speak something which we call 3Ms. So
Okay.
So you all knew what we were talking about.
Yeah, I would love to hear more stories about 3M this evening if we have the time. Yeah, great. And Christian, so you're a graduate of the Columbia Coaching Program as well, I believe. And what's your interest in team coaching?
Yeah, sorry, I was just doing a quick run. So I did 3M, then I was with Praxair, which is industrial specialties. Then I shifted during the dot-com boom to an IT services company. I set up B2B marketplaces and ended up with SAP. I've been with SAP, which is the world's largest business software company last 10 years. And that's where my interest in team coaching really got spurred, because I used to run account planning meetings and account strategy meetings, which essentially were team coaching. Right now, I run my own organization, and I see myself as a catalyst and coach and consultant for change, really. So I'm looking at change as my focus. And yes, I am a Columbia certified coach. I just completed my advanced coaching from Columbia, but I think I've been coaching from 2009 based on what my role was in SAP. Yeah.
And I understand you did a little bit of research on team coaching as well, right? I think part of the Columbia Coaching Program, you have to do some kind of a research paper or a study of some type. Is that right?
That's correct. So I've always been interested as to how teams function when things are not so clear. So my paper was based on that question, because a lot of our customers in SAP and SAP themselves were struggling with complexity, like most large organizations do. And I think the way that that organizations or effective organizations tend to handle complexity is by breaking it down to what happens in the teams and how teams engage to handle the situations that they confront on a day-on-day basis. And that's where I wrote this paper called Coaching Paradigms for Effective Teaming in a VUCA World.
Oh, wow.
VUCA being a wonderful, expression that again came out from the U.S. Army, which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity.
That's right.
Which basically talks about how the nature of change itself is changing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun and a great learning, and happy to share that.
Yeah. So I know you are active on LinkedIn, and you publish posts on short articles on LinkedIn. Is that something we might expect an article on? Your version of that from your coaching?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm trying to keep it short because my paper went to 36 pages or some. So brevity is always, tougher than you think. So I'm trying to keep it short. And yes, I think next week I will be putting a post out on that topic.
Yeah. And just so the other listeners on the call tonight know, Krish and I have been connecting offline, and we're exploring getting Krish on the podcast. So looking forward to following up with you on that, Krish, and having some conversation and really getting into the topic of cross-cultural team coaching, which something we chatted briefly about, and that is really, I think, a rich area for us to dig in a little bit more. Okay, so everyone, thanks for those brief introductions. And so what I want to do is just share a couple of updates on my end of what's sort of going on with me around team coaching these days, and we can hear a little bit from you. Prior to starting the call this evening, Jorge, we were chatting about a dilemma he has of coaching both a manager and one of their subordinates, and that led to some interesting conversations around potential conflict of interest, and that could be an interesting topic for us to also talk about, and whatever else emerges in the session today. But anyways, I thought I would just start off and share a few things. We just released this week the 21st episode of the Team Coaching Zone podcast, and now in about 4.5 to 5 months since launching, we have listeners in 47 countries. We've had more than 4,000 downloads. We're averaging about 1,000 downloads or so per month, and it's growing every month. So there's been some really nice progress on that. And I think given that this is a very niche topic, that's really some nice growth. So there seems to be genuine interest out there. I just today recorded an episode which is going to be being released tomorrow, which is a summary of episodes number 11 through 20. So every time we release 10 episodes, I usually invite somebody on and we have a conversation and try to identify. I hear some banging of keyboard in the background, so I'm not sure where that's coming from, but I'm going to go ahead and mute a few of you, and then we can unmute you as we move along. See where that's coming from. So so anyways, as I was saying, we for a niche podcast like team coaching, I think that's a really nice growth, and it's really evolving. And today I re-recorded this 10 episode review, which is coming out tomorrow. I did that with Dr. David Tate, who was one of the guests of the show back in episode number 15. He's a psychologist. He's at Yale University and a real specialist in coaching family business teams or family enterprise systems. And so we had a conversation today, and we picked out 10 topics that really came up. And I think when you step back and you listen to all of these podcasts and you look at them side by side, there are a number of themes that emerge out of that. And so I think hopefully you'll find that episode interesting. We're also releasing a blog post that summarizes these 10 themes as well tomorrow to go along with the podcast. So something to take a look out on. The other thing I was going to share is 2 weeks ago, myself, one of my colleagues, and a few listeners of the podcast actually went down to Raleigh, North Carolina to do a 3-day team coach training with DJ Mitch. DJ was somebody I interviewed back in episode number 9, and she was really an early pioneer, both in the coaching field, but also in team coaching. And DJ in 2001 became the president. She was a founding board member of the International Coaching Federation, and she also became the president of the ICF and really helped the ICF move from being US-based to an international coaching organizations. So under her tenure, really brought the ICF a global audience. And interestingly, DJ's been doing team coaching for almost 20 years and has developed a really exciting program called the Team Advantage. And basically, this is a team coaching program, and there's a certification program around that. But basically, just to share a little bit of highlights from it, was a really outstanding program. The way the Team Advantage is structured is that when you get trained in this, you basically do what's called an extraordinary game. So you work with the team and its leader, and it's basically a 4 to 6 month process. And without getting too lost in the details, the way it works is you coach the leader of the team for about 2 months leading up to when you start doing the team coaching. As you're doing the one-on-one coaching with the leader, you then do some diagnostic interviews with the team, and then you bring the team together for a 2-day team launch. Now, what's interesting about the launch, and let me just share the rest of the elements of it. So you do this 2-day team launch, and I'll share more about what happens there. But following the launch, you then have 12 coaching sessions, 1-hour coaching sessions that are spread over a 16-week period. So it's just roughly about 1 hour a week done by phone or on a webinar platform like this. And they have 4 extra weeks in there to allow for vacations and company events and holidays and such. So you basically do 1-hour coaching calls with the team, and prior to each coaching call, you do a 15-minute prep call with the leader, and then a 15-minute debriefing call after the session. And so what's really interesting about this approach, so one thing is, it's kind of I would say it's sort of like a service that's become productized into like a package. And while it can be tailored and customized, there's a real ability to scale a Team Advantage program across many teams within a company. So you can have sort of, replicate it and have some similar type of experience. But what makes, I think, this program a bit unique and what I found really interesting is there's a whole element of the program around creativity and neuroscience and around a game, and about, basically that when people play games and are having fun, they really can learn. And so during the 2-day kickoff meeting, you do a number of things. You build a team charter with the team. You also come up with an extraordinary goal, which is what the game is organized around, where over the next 4 months, this team is going to accomplish an extraordinary goal that they choose themselves, and you help them identify this. And so this is something that's really going to force the team to really come together, that can't be accomplished unless it actually is a team working on it, but it's forcing the team to stretch itself beyond its current capacity. And so it's really up to the team to decide. But you come up with an extraordinary goal that really rallies the team, but that can be accomplished in 4 months. And then once you've created that, you then identify some strategic drivers to reach that goal. Now, interestingly, they create points, and the team creates points for each of these strategic drivers. And then that becomes the basis upon which you coach the team in the ensuing weeks. As the team coaching sessions unfold, these 1-hour weekly sessions, really there's a transition to the team leader, so that by the end of these 12 sessions, the team leader is really running the sessions, and you've handed off this approach to the leader and the team. And so it's also a capacity building process, so that by the end of it, there's a sort of a big celebration at the end, so a celebratory event. And basically the idea is that a team, after going through this process, should be able to do this on their own without having needing a team coach. So there's a capacity building part to it. There's some other elements in it around building on Tuckman's 4 stages of forming, storming, norming, and performing, which you may have learned about, if you're familiar with that. And they add 2 other stages to it at the front end, something called informing, which is really building the leader and team's readiness for team coaching. Then the 4 stages of Tuckman's model, and then really celebration at the end. So really the idea is that over the 4 to 6 month period, they really try to help a team go through all of these stages during the team coaching process, but really accomplish a really extraordinary goal. So anyways, I went through this program with a handful of people. I thought it was totally excellent, and lots of exciting things coming from that. We had one person from Spain who joined to attend this training. All the others who were there were coming from the United States. But a really outstanding team coaching training, and I thought I'd share a little bit more about that with you. I'm sure we're going to have more guests from this who have been trained as Team Advantage coaches, and and one of the things that's really fascinating about DJ and some of her work is they've been getting some contracts where they're doing 25 to 50 team to even up to 60, I think was the most they've ever done in one company, team coaching engagements all at the same time. So it's really a process that can be scaled up and replicated. Really, to become team coaching is not just about helping one team improve its performance, but also really looking at improving the performance of a whole organization and using team coaching as really a change management vehicle. And I find that really exciting. So I think a lot more to come. You're going to be hearing on the Team Coaching Zone podcast and more about the Team Advantage program moving forward. So anyways, that's sort of some big news on my end, and I have some other things working behind the scenes on that, which I'm excited to share in the coming months. I think you're going to be hearing more about the Team Advantage and some collaborations that are emerging. So anyways, I would go ahead. I thought I'd go ahead and share that this evening because I found that really a fascinating experience. So I don't know if there's any questions about that you might be interested in hearing about. I've sort of opened up the space here. If you'd like to ask questions, comments, if you have anything to share about that, we can get some dialogue going. And then also, Jorge, would love to hear a little bit more about your dilemma at some point too. But see if anybody had any questions about. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Chris, Jorge, I mean, I've never have seen the team coaching working. I know we've been working on team building exercises,
Right.
Offsites to do this, but
Right.
but when you do this team coaching, how do you work at the end? You have to look at the individual. Where does coaching on a one-to-one basis come into place in a team, in this team coaching effort,
Yeah.
Because
Well,
I mean, at the end you have to ask, what do I have to do? Is this the ideal team? I mean, where am I personally there? And I
yeah.
have to work issues, no?
Yeah. Great question. So, I mean, my sense is that in every team, there's a polarity or a tension between the individual, what the individual wants, the individual's goals, the individual's development needs, and then really what the team's needs and goals are. And I think it's a false, when you're doing team coaching, it doesn't mean you can't also do one-to-one coaching. And I know, for example, one person I had on the show, Jean Frankel, she's right now coaching 14 leaders of a senior leadership team. They're all getting one-on-one coaching, but then she's coaching all of them as a team and as a collective. And so I think where there's a little bit of a difference is that when you're coaching a team, Jorge, have you ever had the experience of working as part of a team, whether it's a work team or a sports team, where the members of the team are working so well together that the sum of the parts becomes more than the whole? If you know what I mean, like when synergy happens or flow happens, or like the team goes beyond the individual level and really the team as a whole becomes almost like an organism unto itself. In a way, that's really what I think you're really trying to do in team coaching is you're paying attention to individuals, but what really your client is the group as a whole. And so when you're making interventions, what you're trying to do is really help the group move from the individual level of mind to a collective mindset and really helping them observe the dynamic in the group and really helping them sort of really move to the point where 1 + 1 = 3, right? Where synergy begins to happen and the interaction between the parts creates something new. And really that's part of, I think that's really what, in team coaching, the ideal is to really be able to create a place where that can start to happen, where the group, it's kind of like a good metaphor is when you have 5-star basketball players, each of whom is a star player. But when you put them together, just because they're 5-star players doesn't mean they're going to work well together as a team. And you might have 5 mediocre players who are mediocre players as individuals, but they really know how to work well together and they can outperform the team of 5 individuals. And so I think that's sort of a little bit of just a quick response. what immediately comes to my mind when you sort of looking at coaching individuals versus coaching a team. There's a really well-known scholar, Ruth Wageman, who wrote a paper in 2005 with Richard Hackman. Richard Hackman was he passed away a few years ago, was a real seminal figure in the area of team under research and writing on teams and on team coaching. And they published an article on the theory of team coaching. And Ruth Wageman also co-published with Richard Hackman in 2008 a book on leadership team coaching, or working with senior leadership teams. And one of the things she said is it's not enough to coach each individual leader, because just coaching each individual leader may increase some performance, but the way they collaborate together as a team is a whole nother level, and that needs to become the focus of team coaching as well in order for that team to really go to the next level. So I don't know, does that respond to your question in any way, Jorge?
Yeah. Yes, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, may I add a couple of points? I don't know. I think I just love. So I think I'd like to pick up on the point that you made about synergy. I think that's really a moot point. And I love the basketball analogy. And I was reading this about Coach Wooden somewhere about the teams that he would coach. The individuals then ended up being in a place where they would know instinctively where the other person was and could pass the ball into an empty space where they would be sure that the team player would come up and grab the ball. And that's how his teams, that's what he inculcated. So I think the magic about team coaching, and I've seen this work in practice, is that when it works well, you can see people stepping out of their individual shells and their self-defined limitations of role or capabilities, and really say, I'm part of a bigger whole, and let me operate as part of this bigger thing that I'm part of. So it's all about, I think, inculcating a larger sense of purpose, unity, and direction, which training doesn't do that, unfortunately. Training imparts the skills, but the team coaching really helps to bring that together.
Yeah, I really agree. I mean, I think there is a sense of moving beyond the self and focus on the self to focusing on a we. And, in order for that to happen, I think if you go back to Catherine Carr and Jacqueline Peters in episodes number 12 and 13, they have a high performance team coaching model that has 6 stages. And you can download their model on the resources page of the Team Coaching Zone website. There's a download there, and there's a PDF. You can download their model. Their book is really excellent, by the way. Also, it's called the High Performance Team Coaching by Peters and Carr. It's very inexpensive on Amazon. It's a pretty quick read. It's really worth the $7 or something that it costs. But at the center of their model, they have like a pie. If you can imagine a pizza pie cut up into 6 wedges, and each of the 6 wedges of the pie are one phase of their team coaching model. But at the center of it is trust. It's either trust or safety. I think it's actually trust. And basically what they get at, and I think this is going to what you were saying, Krish, is that really what enables people to be able to move from the individual to the team or collective really is around safety and trust. And that's really, it's really difficult for people to let go of their self-centered sort of focus in a way without really building, without a sense of trust and able to move there, that that people have their back, that they really can sort of develop this higher purpose, which is more about the we rather than the me. So anyways, I think that's pretty neat. So Kathy here, just checking in the chat window, says, I was going to connect your outline of the team advantage to a conversation I had with a potential client related to design. Yeah, for sure. So happy to chat offline about that as well, Kathy. But, and this is one of the things that when I was doing the summary episode today with David Tate, we spoke about how, a lot of the people that I've been interviewing on the podcast, some come with very clear models of team coaching, like Peter Hawkins, like DJ Mitch, like Catherine Carr, Jennifer Britton, have sort of their own models around team coaching. Others are more homegrown. A lot of folks like myself just started doing team coaching without even knowing what to call it, and developed our own models of that. But I think what's interesting is when you look across all of these different approaches to team coaching, there's a number of elements that are really similar. One of them, some of the common elements are this coaching and preparation of the leader before and during the team coaching process starts. Doing some data collection about the team through interviews or through surveys or through some kind of diagnostic instruments. Doing some kind of kickoff meeting where you can really form some good relationships and build an alliance, and then really coaching sessions following where you can sustain the process of the team over a period of time. So I think those elements are sort of like really meta level elements that really seem to be cutting across a lot of the different unique approaches people are taking to doing team coaching.
Chris,
Yeah.
does size of the team matter or not?
Great question. Now, I'd love to hear what others on this, others on the call feel about this. So, I think there's a number of ways of answering this. So, there's some research, and actually, Richard Hackman in his book "Leading Teams: Setting the Stage for Great Performances." I think it's a classic book. I would highly recommend everyone reading that. There's a great chapter in there on team coaching. He did some research actually. I actually have the book on the bookshelf behind me, and he found that somewhere around 5, when you have 5 people in the team, as you start to add more people to the team, adding more people to the team starts to level off in terms of the amount of efficiency, the amount of productivity, the amount of creativity that you get, and it starts to really dip down around 9 or 10. So somewhere between 5 and 10 seems to be like a magic number, really for the ideal size of a team. After that, it just becomes harder and harder to integrate the complexity. But like DJ Mitch, when I was down with the Team Advantage, she sort of feels comfortable coaching teams up to about 15. In cases where she's done even up to the low 20s, she's done that, but finds that becomes much more challenging. Um, there's something about the magic number around 5. I know when I was back in my graduate training, being trained in group relations, we were always given the rule of 7 plus or minus 2. So if you had 7 people, you could have down to 5. If you get smaller than 5, you start to get kind of family dynamics, and it becomes a little bit harder. And then when you get over 9, you start having an issue of managing complexity. So, anyways, I don't think there's a steadfast rule of thumb on it, but there is a little bit of research on this and some general guidelines. And it may be that if you end up having 20 people or 30 people, you might think about doing some kind of kickoff meeting with everyone, but then really breaking those teams up into smaller teams. Because I imagine a team of 30 people already has sub teams built into their structure. Peter Hawkins in episode number 19, when I interviewed him, speaks a little bit about doing team coaching between teams in the same company that have to interact with each other. And so he talks about inter-team coaching. So you have 3 teams and they're in the same room together with their own team coaches for different kinds of sessions, but where they're doing a bit of team coaching across the teams. I'd be curious to hear from others. Yeah, Kathy and Krish, about what do you guys think about Jorge's question?
Costa, based on my experience, I think it's exactly in the ballpark of what you said. The only dimension I'd like to bring there is culture, because when I used to run my sessions, and we used to do a lot of sessions based on design thinking, we would keep the teams to about 20. So because design thinking is based on a lot of interaction, people doing things, so you get a lot of energy. But then when we would get into breakout groups and smaller teams, and we would coach the teams, considering that a lot of work I did is in Asia, where people are a little more reticent, don't speak up as much. The breakout groups and the team coaching groups were 7 to 9, never more than 9, because then it was unmanageable. Right. But I think that's bang in your ballpark of 7 plus or minus 2.
Yeah.
So yeah. So the big team would be, or the facilitation session would be around 20 people, but we'll break it down to groups of 7 to 9 kind of thing. So 3 groups, and do team coaching there.
Yeah, I've been that's great. And building on that, in Richard Hackman's book, he talks a little bit about software teams, and he talks about Microsoft. And Microsoft, when it has software development teams, even if they're when they have big programming projects, they break down a large I don't know, maybe it's something like Windows, whatever the new Windows platform is. They break down really big projects, and they break it down and cluster it into teams of around 5 to 7. And and if a piece of work requires more than that, they still organize it in groups of 7. And then I think going up the reporting line, no higher level supervisor would be supervising more than X number of development teams underneath them. So I think in the technology sector, there's a lot of knowledge around, for rapid software development, like and programming, like how many people working in a team, becomes manageable. And I think, Chris, do you have a bit of experience around that, working with software teams and in software development or programming?
Yep, I can share my experience in bringing people together, not so much to write code, but to what we call defined requirements, which actually is a big thing before you write software, right?
Right.
In that process, we would, first of all, the process is iterative. So you would make sure that teams go in and try to break the work down into pieces and come out with specific results in a specific time frame. So there's a process called Scrum that is actually used very effectively, and there, based on the expertise, again, you'd assemble the team. But again, I think when I think back, it's never more than 7 to 9. Even in our development labs, you would have teams of 7 to 9, get them into a huddle, make sure that they're progressing, build a leaderboard, build a chart where they are tracking their progress, and make sure that the energy and the synergy of the team is up. So yeah, it comes back to that. So
yeah, that was something we also studied. Somebody else wanted to come in.
No. I was just saying thank you. That's very, very interesting reflection.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then when you actually, there's also been some research and studies done on how big of a division or sub organizations within a larger organization, how big of a network can people really handle? And so this has sort of been studied that people can handle a community of about 150 relationships or connections, and that once we get bigger than 150, it becomes difficult for people. You get a lot of loss in terms of larger organizational systems. So some companies that are massive have studied this principle, and they organize units and divisions by 150 maximum, because that seems to be about the number of connections that we're able to handle, mentally, in terms of relationships, before we kind of get lost in size. So, for smaller teams trying to accomplish a specific task or project or objective, it seems like, somewhere around 7 to 9 is a magic number. But then when you start to look at larger organizational units, there's also some interesting research on that, which I find that topic really interesting. Cool. So other thoughts or questions? Now, Jorge, you had a little dilemma earlier in the call. I'd love for maybe you could put that out to the group, and we can get some thoughts from the group on your dilemma.
Again, it's not on team coaching, but it's happening on a team in which I have a client which I recently hired me director to be his coach, and it was not the company that hired me. They're not a sponsor. It's of his own initiative. Then I guess through 360 that I had to do, his supervisor finds out about me and say, "I will, let's have some lunch together next week." And I'm sort of thinking that this lunch is going to take us to a discussion on, because he just took this new responsibility that he might say, "Well, I'd like to explore if that's a possibility for you to coach me as well." And then I was thinking, is this any potential conflict? Because I'm hearing things, although the supervisor has not talked too much about his boss, okay, because he just came into the group. And I don't know where will this lead. It's just the beginning of the coaching process. But will I be encountering situations in which he will be the subordinate will talk to me about his boss, and then if I'm coaching his supervisor, the supervisor might be telling me about this a member of his team. Does this present a conflict to anybody? Has anybody worked with that sort of thing? This is my question.
This is a great question and a great dilemma. I can jump in and share a little bit. I'm sure others have perspective on that too. I for sure have run into this type of situation, and recently I did some 360 feedback work with both a senior leader and one of their senior managers that reported to him or her. And for
Hi, are
sure,
you there?
yes.
Hello?
Who's on?
Brian?
Hello?
Brian?
No, this is Krister. Hello. I think we had somebody who called in, and maybe I recognize the voice though. I think I know who the person is, so she may have accidentally called in the wrong line. But and anyway, so as I was saying, yeah, so I ended, and so they did have a bit of they actually had some tension between each other in the coaching relationship. And I guess I did all of my coach training. I did CTI's, the Coaches Training Institute program. This is 104 hours of coach training, and it's sort of based on a model. And one of the principles in coactive coaching, which I really liked, is the idea that we view each person as creative, resourceful, and whole. And really, my job is really, as a coach, is really to really co-create a space with that person, which enables them to grow and become more effective as a human being. And so really, if struggling with a subordinate becomes an issue, I think my job as a coach is really to help the person not be looking at sort of projecting onto the subordinate in the conversation, but really looking at what is that teaching about the leader, him or herself, and how can we use that as a vehicle to help them become more effective and become more creative and adaptive. And so, I think during that process, if I have information about the subordinate, I think I have to be careful about regulating that and not really injecting that into the conversation, because then I'm probably not coaching anymore, and I've started to become a problem solver, a consultant, or something else. And so, I think if you really stick true to coaching principles and about co-creating and really allowing the client to discover, then really I think I can probably manage lots of other potential information, which could be problematic if I actually start bringing that into the coaching session. But for sure, there's probably some risks involved there. And I guess as a coach, you probably would need to know when you've overstepped your boundary, and if you're not really able to maintain your role as a coach. And at that point, maybe you might need to get another coach to split them apart in order to be able to maintain that. But my sense is you should go ahead and do the coaching, and really monitor yourself. And if you have supervision, to be able to sort of just process that. And if you find yourself at a point where you feel like you're compromising your ability to maintain your role as a coach, and then it might be time to be transparent about that with one of the parties.
I was thinking that you have to be at the outset, if you're going to take the engagement, you have to tell both parties that, or at least the person that just hired me, that listen, this is I might be doing this. Should you be that transparent that say I'm going to be coaching your supervisor as well, or not? I mean, this is. It feels like I should, but I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I'd be curious what others have to say about that. I haven't had the case where I've been hired independently by two people in the same company. Usually I get hired by the supervisor, and the coaching is provided for a few people in the team. And so they both know that each one's getting the coaching.
So,
yeah,
Costa, if I may share my 2 cents.
Yeah, please jump in.
I think if you look at the fundamentals of coaching, right, I think first of all, it's about interpersonal trust. So I think the question, I guess, Aldo, you need to ask yourself
it's Jorge. It was actually Jorge.
Sorry. Jorge, you'll have to ask yourself is, what will break trust? Will what whatever course of action that you're contemplating, will that break trust? And if you feel the answer to that is yes, then you might need to be honest and either, as you said, share it with both the folks that, hey, this is what's happening, or you might want to time box it. The one way of doing it is to say, listen, I feel there is, I'm focusing on this individual now, and I would love to take you up, but I'm going to take you up only after I complete my assignment with this person, and then so split it chronologically is one approach. So sequentially, don't take both of them at the same time, and because you're open with them, I guess they will trust you not to share what you're coaching each other. One, and second is, since you said that they're both individuals who are approaching you, you have no organizational obligation to disclose anything to them as part of an organization. I had a situation where, honestly, I was asked to coach in a team situation, a team and a leader, and there was a little bit of dynamic between the team and the leader. So I actually brought in somebody as one of my colleagues, or somebody whom I knew, also whom I respected as a good coach, and I handled the team, and I requested this person to handle the team leader, so that coaching would happen, but I'm not caught into the interpersonal dynamics between the team and the leader. So it sounds to me your situation is a little similar to that.
Very interesting. I thank for the input, Christian, Christopher.
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma, Jorge. And that's what it is. I guess it's a dilemma, right? So.
All right. I'll give some thoughts of your input. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I in episode number 2 of the podcast, I spoke about one of my early team coaching engagements, and one of the things I had learned from doing before getting into team coaching, I'd done a lot of work in mediation and sometimes mediating conflicts. And one of the things I learned is when I was mediating two people and we would have multiple sessions, if the conflicts were really difficult, oftentimes what would happen is outside of the mediation sessions, the individuals would want to have contact with me. And in some cases, what I found was that contact ended up really undermining the work that we were doing in the session together. And at the end of the day, when you're mediating two people, their ability to reestablish trust in a relationship that works when you're not around is really, in a way, the ultimate goal of a mediation if they're going to maintain a relationship. And so a lot of the work that would happen outside of the session, where they would be wanting some coaching or one-on-one with me, ended up feeling good to them, and it made me feel like I was helping them. But in the end, it actually was work that they needed to be doing in the face of each other, and it probably wasn't ultimately helpful in the long run. So in episode number 2 of the podcast, I share a story of a team of 6 people, a leadership team I was working with, which was really contentious, and a lot of damage and repair needed to happen in that group. And one of the contracting things I decided to do with this group, because I felt like it was a high-risk group and because there was so much bad blood there, was really basically to contract with them to say that I wouldn't have any one-on-one conversations or do any one-on-one coaching with any of the individual members, and that my client was all of them as a team. And I think this was really valuable because it really helped create safety, and really it helped me maintain my role as the coach to really focus on who my client was, which was the team. And I also said one other thing: if they really needed to speak with me, then what I needed to be able to get their consent was that I was going to share that I had a conversation with them with the rest of the group and what the high level topic was about. So not getting into the details, but if somebody really needed to speak with me, I created a way for that to happen, but with really tight boundary rules around it. And it worked really well because in the end, I didn't get pulled on to have these offline conversations with the parties. And I think that really served me well to really maintain the environment and the boundaries of who my client was, which was the team as a whole. And that really helped in the end. So I think going back to what Krish was saying, just really around trust. So I think it's really about establishing trust. And if you feel like you're not able to maintain trust with the group and your boundaries around that are being violated, then it's probably something that needs to be recontracted or revisited. Now, I brought this up with one of the guests on my show, Gene Frankel, in episode number 5, where I was saying, isn't it really hard to coach 14 leaders individually and then also coach them as a team? And she said it has been challenging, and one of the ways she's been managing that is to really bring on another team coach to coach with her. So she's really bringing, because holding a system of 14 senior leaders like that could be really challenging, and so she really she's now brought on 2 other people to really help her with the one-on-one coaching. She's maintaining the main role as the team coach for all 14 when they're all together as a group. So I think that's another great way for doing that. I see some folks are starting to drop off the call, and we're getting to the end. But I think on that topic, just a couple of things. I know before the call started, we were talking. Some of you haven't done any team coaching yet. And, Jennifer Porter, I think it was in episode number 16, spoke about finding what she calls sandbox clients. These are clients that you can be explicit with them up front that you're new to team coaching, and it's like finding a practice client, basically. But at some point, the only way ultimately to learn is by doing. There's a saying that we learn 70% of what we know by doing it, 20% from mentoring and coaching, and 10% from formal training. And so in some ways, I think if you've been working with teams, you have done one-on-one coaching, you're probably ready to get in and do a bit of team coaching, but find a low-risk client, be transparent about that, get supervision, and even do co-team coaching. I think this is a topic that's coming up in quite a few of the podcast episodes that I've been doing and interviewing, is people talking about a lot of team coaching is done in pairs. In the Team Advantage program that I went through, they highly recommend that you co-team coach, because it really can be challenging to manage the dynamics of a team. And when you're in coaching sessions, if one person is in the moment working with the group, another one can be sort of step back, really seeing and monitoring the dynamics of the group as a whole and dropping in strategically as needed. So a couple other things there. Yeah. So I know, Chris, you have to pop off, and it looked like Kathy and Aldo, they've had to pop off as well. So any sort of closing comments, and then we can start to wrap up this session today.
I like your thought, just go and do, 70% and choose low risk type of thing to begin with. So that's a good thought, okay? Because otherwise we'll never learn. It's more theoretical, until you jump into the pool.
Yeah, I'll just say a couple other quick things about that. When I became a trainer, I started off by being an assistant to some, really good trainers. I then was given small pieces of a larger, like 2-day training. And then eventually I got bigger pieces. And then eventually I would co-train with somebody who was more in the lead and I was in the second role. And then eventually we were equals. And then eventually I was leading and they were, supporting. And then eventually I would train myself with somebody in the back, and so I think in a way, just like learning anything, you kind of need to do it probably 5 to 10 times before you get it in your bones, and you're more likely to be able to do it alone. And I think that's definitely true also for team coaching. The learning curve is steep, but once you've done a handful of these, it'll get more into your bones and become more intuitive, and something that something that should be more manageable.
Absolutely. No, thank you. That's a very, very, very good. I was going to ask you, could you repeat again the name of the books that you refer for reading? You said High Performance Team Coaching.
Yeah.
Is that
So
correct?
if you go to teamcoachingzone.com and go to the tab that says resources, there's a whole list of books, articles, assessments, training programs. I think if there are like a couple of books that I would really recommend all team coaches read, From One to Many, Best Practices for Team and Group Coaching with Jennifer Britton, really outstanding book. One of my favorite books right now is Peter Hawkins' Leadership Team Coaching. That's really an outstanding book. Really, I would highly recommend that one. Another really, great book is by Catherine Carr and Jacqueline Peters, and that one's called The High Performance Team Coaching. And all of these books are available on Amazon. Some of them we have models from their books already in the. But I think if you read those 3 books, you're really gonna really get to the heart of really the best stuff on team coaching, in my view. And earlier, Jorge, you're talking a little bit, you've done some work with teams, team building, or team facilitation. Peter Hawkins, in his book on leadership team coaching, he talks about something called the team coaching continuum. And what he says is there are like kind of 5 or 6 developmental stages of team coaching. So on the easiest end of the continuum, this is a continuum, imagine it from left to right. On the farthermost left end of the continuum is team building. So where you take a group off site, you do a team building, help them, get to know each other and have some fun and really build relationships. That's basically what he would say is the most simple form of team coaching. You then move over to what he would call team facilitation, where you move beyond team building, but where the role of the team coach is really just to facilitate the group's process. The group is taking full ownership of their task, but you're just facilitating and helping them, communicate, make sure everybody gets their voices in. You're really just managing the process, but not really, dealing with their task outcomes. And so as you're going to see in this continuum, you move from more internally focused coaching to more externally focused, which will become apparent in a minute. What's next after team facilitation? Well, he would call that sort of team performance coaching. So now you're getting into the role where, and this is more of, I think, what we're talking about on this webinar is really I think we would say team coaching really starts coming into what it potentially can be. Whereas the coach, you're really not just focusing on process, but you're also looking at task and really helping the team become a high performing team that can perform at a higher level and accomplish its goal and objective. The next stage on the model he talks about is leadership team coaching, which is where you're really working with a leadership team that has responsibility. Each leader has responsibility underneath them, but the leadership team as a whole needs to work across silos, right, and across functional areas to become more effective in providing leadership for the organization. He then moves on to what he calls transformational leadership team coaching, is where you're really working with a leadership team that not only needs to manage the current business, but needs to be driving organizational change and inventing, like the metaphor is a leadership team that's sailing a ship, and at the same time it needs to build its next ship for the ship they're going to be sailing a couple years down the road. So that is what he calls transformational leadership team coaching. And then the farthest one on the end of the continuum is what he calls systemic team coaching, which is really looking at a leadership team or a team in a larger systemic context. And this is very much externally focused team coaching, where you really look at the team and how it relates to stakeholders in its environment. And the relationship between the team and these stakeholders becomes the focus of the team coaching. And so what he would say is, each of these stages of development become increasingly complex and sophisticated. And as a team coach, you're going to need more skills and more experience. And it moves from being internally focused on what's going on inside the team to really more the team as an agent of change in a larger system. And even inter-team coaching, inter-organizational team coaching, things like that become more at the, the end of the continuum. So what I would say, Jorge, going back to your sort of entry into team coaching, is you are a team coach now. You may be down at the end of team building and team facilitation, but really this is a developmental journey, and at the end of the day, you have to start doing it, and maybe getting some training or supervision along the way could be helpful, but it's a process of learning and development.
So I love this model that you refer to. This is what Peter Hawkins says in the leadership team coaching.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, so the book is called Leadership Team Coaching. I'm gonna just pull it off my shelf here real quick. It's called Leadership Team Coaching: Developing Collective Transformational Leadership. This, I have to say, if there was one book, if I had to sort of boil down to one book, I would really pick this one. It's a must read on team coaching, and totally outstanding. A lot of great practical models. That continuum of team coaching is mentioned in there, and I would really recommend that. You'll find that one listed out on the Team Coaching Zone resources page as well.
Wow. I love to see. Is there anything that you can recommend me if I want to go into any sort of formal training on this?
Absolutely. So Peter Hawkins does offer training programs in his approach to team coaching. I think he has a 3-day certificate program, and then he has a longer, like year-long program, which involves supervision and all kinds of things. So you can basically do a light touch to get the basics, or if you really want to get supervised, he has a deeper program that's like a year-long program. So I think what's really exciting, and this is something that will on the podcast that I'm releasing tomorrow in the blog post, is right now, my sense, I have actually interviewed a lot of the folks in the last 10 episodes of the podcast who actually have, robust team coach training programs. So Jennifer Britton, number 11, she's in Canada. She has both a virtual team and group coaching training program and also a face-to-face one. Kathy Vaughn, who was on the call earlier, has been going through that one, and or she may be finished with that. I just mentioned Peter Hawkins. He has one. He's based in the UK, but they do that in different parts of the world. I think it's going to be offered in Boston this fall. And I've been talking with some of my colleagues that there's probably enough interest from listeners of the podcast to try to see if we can invite Peter Hawkins to come and organize a session that the Team Coaching Zone may be able to attract him to come and do a session. So I'll let you know if we end up doing that. DJ Mitch, who I just went down and did this 3-day Team Advantage coach training program, she offers that a couple times a year. A really another excellent program. And a fourth one, which I'll mention in episode number 20, I interviewed Marita Frijan, who has a systems coach training program. It's called the Organization and Relationship Systems Training Program. ORSC is what the acronym is. And those are 4 really ICF accredited, reputable team coach training programs. So I think the really good news is there's some really great programs out there now on team coaching that team coaches can avail themselves of. I just did the Team Advantage one with DJ Mitch. I can totally highly recommend that one. I'm also interested. I'm probably going to pursue doing some of the training with all of these really great programs myself. So.
Sounds interesting. Please do. I would love to. And if you do make that offering as well, I mean, I will check on after reading the book what's being offered by Peter Hawkins, which will be interesting after the Columbia. Hopefully, I feel successful in the program, and then I can move to more training. But very much appreciate the podcast, the webinar. It's been really great, and I really appreciate your initiative. I think you're touching into something that it's very important, and it's in every company's mind. My team. How do I make this team become 1 + 1 = 3?
That's right.
So,
that's
fantastic.
Yeah, and Jorge, if you haven't listened to any episodes of the podcast,
I will.
If you haven't, so you can get to know each of these people. So I interviewed DJ Mitch in episode number 9, Jennifer Britton in episode number 11, Peter Hawkins in episode 19, and Marita Frijan in episode 20. And for each of these episodes, I also have on the website show notes pages with an outline of what we spoke about on the interview, as well as ways to contact them. And many of them shared free resources. So what you might do is listen to each of those to get to know each one, and then contact them and check out the pricing and whatever they offer and see which program might be the right fit for you.
Well, that's fantastic. And just another thought.
Sure.
Is it possible, or maybe one of these you have done, I don't know, but to look at any sort of actual coaching, for illustration purposes, just like we do, in all our practicums in Columbia, they become real. I mean, you're seeing it, you experience. I mean, is there something like that, or is this not possible?
No, you mean so like we like on a webinar like this, we might do a demonstration of some team coaching,
or something, or that you share something that was taped before.
Right.
Because I have not seen how does it work, the dynamics. I'm curious to see how it really works.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know of any videos on that, but it would be fascinating to do something like that. I know when I did the Team Advantage program with DJ Mitch, we actually ran a simulation where each of us who came to the training, there were 8 of us, were given a role in a fictitious company. And basically across the 3 days, they actually taught us how to do team coaching by having us act as a team. And we did team coach. We basically went through a faster version in 3 days of their their team coach process. And we actually did mock telephone calls where we all just turned our chairs backwards, and the coaches would call in, and we would do 20 or 30-minute coaching sessions with the team as a whole. But we basically were doing like a simulation. So we got to see that a bit in action, but we didn't record any of that, and I don't think it's publicly available. But my sense is, Jorge, that's a really great idea, a really creative idea. And my guess is, as the team coaching field evolves and develops, you'll probably start to see more things like that emerging. But
Wonderful.
an interesting thing,
Thank you very much.
something we can try to organize at some point. Yeah. But good stuff. Great. It's a great idea. Well, thanks so much for joining, and I know the others have dropped off now and have they had other coaching calls and other things to get to. But nice to have you here, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the future, Jorge.
Me too. Look forward to see you again. Thank you, Christopher.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.